It is Friday here on the Market Day Report. I'm John Jenkinson. Thank you very much for joining us on this January the 12th Crop Report Day. And this is, in the scheme of things, this is probably one of the bigger ones of the year. That comes out at 11 o'clock Central Time, 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time. So we'll be watching that very, very closely and bring you the latest on all of that. We did have some overnight sales to report. This morning, USDA reports that 320,000 metric ton of corn sold to unknown destinations. So whether or not that could affect the market or not here first thing this morning, we'll have to wait and see. Last night on the overnight trade, it was very, very quiet. In fact, the corn market was basically as it was yesterday. Didn't really go very far. It was March corn up a half, December corn up a half, and remember the markets are in their pause right now. We go on over to the soybean market. January beans up a half, March beans down 3/4. Wheat market was just as quiet. March up a half, May down 1/4. You go to the Kansas City wheat market, March was up 1/4, July was down 1/4, so you can see very, very mixed here. March Minneapolis wheat down 1 on the overnight, July up down a half at 638.5. But the cotton market, again, up 79 points in the overnight trade, 83.44. And how much higher that will go, we'll have to wait and see. Let's bring in RichNelson with Allendale Incorporated here this morning. Well, Rich, today is the day. What's the mood so far that you're hearing?
Well, I guess right now a lot of apprehension, certainly on our side in this office, but no doubt throughout the nation, a lot of producers looking forward or hoping to see some type of good news, a change in the news flow from what's been obviously some problematic pricing here these past few months. And USDA certainly could give us something for everybody, both bulls and bears, in this report series here today.
You mentioned a lot of the pre-report concerns and views of how things look going into this. So, is there one way or the other that the trade seems to be leaning, or is there maybe some bullishness or bearishness that has been baked into this market so far?
You know, I guess probably on the feed grain side, in my opinion, maybe certainly on the corn side of things here, the trade probably has a slightly hopeful tone as far as what USDA could say here today. Obviously, we do know that domestic usage is surpassing exports as far as the problems issue on corn. But on the other hand, you still have this looming issue of what USDA could do with yields. They certainly could raise them here today, which would not be unheard of according to the history we've seen here in recent months. And as far as soybeans, obviously we have a big question about exports. I think that's one that the trade is probably bracing to see what USDA does. And looking over some of their products, for instance, on the wheat end of things here, we'll see what USDA does there as well with exports. I think a lot of people would suggest we're behind on the current pace, but maybe not in a major problem, though. So we'll see what USDA gives us here today.
Rich, I had the opportunity to travel earlier this week and speak to producers, and some said that, yeah, they were kind of locked into their rotations, their crop rotations, so they can't do too much changing. But some that had some flexibility said, we're going to take a real close look at where things line up after this report and maybe make some alternatives to maybe some more profitable crops. And if you look at cotton right now, there's a lot of folks taking a pretty serious look at that.
That's a very, very important point there. So we had the cotton, in fact, cotton acres picked up about 2 million acres over 2017 compared with 2016. And here we are looking at some very good pricing. In fact, we have producers in Texas delivering cotton, which their local buyers suggested were the best quality they've seen, which is still getting docked. So I think on the U.S. side, we probably are going to discuss a very valid discussion point as far as higher cotton acres. Also keep in mind as far as the corn-soybean issue, well, a lot of producers still haven't made their final determination for this coming spring planting either. So a lot of good questions still in front of us right now.
RichNelson with Allendale Incorporated here with us. And when we come back, we'll get into the livestock trade. That's straight ahead here on the Market Day Report. Let's welcome back Rich Nelson with Allendale Incorporated here on our livestock segment. Rich, this week, the cattle trade all wrapped up. Now it's looking ahead to next week. However, A couple of things. Number one, the futures actually were a little bit weak, but the live cattle futures actually firmed going into the close yesterday. But then we had the cutouts that showed we were in negative territory yesterday afternoon.
A very valid point on this cash cattle side. We obviously have been leading, and looks like maybe box beef might be following in this case right now. But, for this today's discussion on cattle, we, of course, have some mixed news in front of us. Obviously, we have some negative influence from both the cash cattle and also the wholesale beef issues. On the other hand, we can point out that this temperature issue is going to go back to something maybe a little concerning here by this Saturday through Tuesday period for many of these producers. So perhaps we'll see if we get some stability. As it stands right now, nothing's showing up here just yet.
Well, you mentioned those temperatures back from where I'm from in southwest Kansas, Rich. 2 days ago, it was in the 70s, and this morning it's 1 degree above zero. So, boy, that puts those poor cattle into shock. What about the hog market? Because there's been a lot of interest over here to see if maybe this market found its top.
And that's probably a very valid discussion here. Of course, we still have a lot of news in front of us for the year, but for the short-term issues, we did rally up going into this storm for the western Corn Belt. Now that's actually passing many of the key hog plants. We're only looking at perhaps a small weather-related shortfall, maybe for a plant or two here this morning, but nothing in terms of anything serious. Also, like many people might have been perhaps a little disappointed by yesterday's weekly pork export numbers. As it stands, we had 6 weeks in a row of great pork exports. The South Korea story is a hot-button issue. But yesterday's numbers could have suggested that perhaps this buying might be cooling off now, simply as we're getting too close to that February 9th start for South Korea's Olympics here.
That's an excellent point. Here about a month ago, there was a lot of folks in the trade saying, well, watch for that $60 mark in crude oil. And, boy, that is in the rearview mirror now. Crude oil still pushing higher. February down 42, though, at 63.38. But look at where we're trading, in the 63s all the way through the front 1, 2, 3, 4 contracts here.
Amazing gains here, and certainly this has generated a lot of talk for, of course, us in agriculture about this general commodity-based influence. And as it stands right now, a lot of people are getting quite a bit energized. In fact, the Wall Street Journal suggested there's some whispers of maybe $80 crude at some point in the future. So we have a lot of questions about this exciting commodity rally, which so far U.S. agriculture is not on top of here yet.
And that was my question. Could the rally in crude oil actually bring some fun money back to the grains?
It certainly could, and I got to say, from our personal discussions, we do a lot of consulting actually with many of the hedge funds on the East Coast, and from their perspective, there's a lot of pent-up money looking for something other than the stock market to be involved in. And as it stands right now, energies are certainly the one here, but a lot of these fund managers tell us directly, until we see something beneficial on the fundamental side as far as grains and livestock, well, I should just point out grains, then they want to stay on the sidelines here for right now.
RichNelson, Allendale Incorporated, here with us. Rich, it's always good to talk to you first thing in the morning. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Also keep in mind, again, the markets will be closed on Monday in observance of a national holiday. But today at 11 o'clock Central Time is when we'll release that USDA report, Janet. And we will be here to be on top of all of it.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it, as always.